Hope everybody's okay. Oh, because you don't want my energy, Philo?
Are you guys siblings or twins? So we will pick it up from last week. This is the fourth and final week of the series. Hopefully next week you guys will have a change of pace and somebody else will be talking. So just a reminder that this is a theme verse from Deuteronomy 6, 5-9. This is essentially what's guided every single talk and what I hope is going to guide anything that you change about your life after the series. So far, we talked about in week 1 the initial pursuit. So when God is trying to sort of get introduced and start a conversation with you and plant the seed about your relationship. And then week 2 was about when you're actually in the relationship, what does it look like and why relationships are hard work and what you have to do to keep your end of the bargain. And then last week was about your first fight. So when you don't see eye to eye with God, how do you make sure that your struggles make your relationship rather than break your relationship? This week is about committing for life. Okay, so everybody who's heard this series makes fun of me because they know that I love goals and relationship goals is my favorite service ever and blah, 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 blah. And I'm trying to incorporate it a little bit too much into this series. But in order for me to accurately explain what I mean in this particular talk, I need to give some relationship background. Okay, so just bear with me for a second. When I was dating my husband 100 billion years ago, and we were, in the early stages of the relationship, we did a lot of reading because we're both nerds and we're both geeks and blah, blah, blah. And we found a series of articles that mapped out kind of the expected phases in a relationship, right? So, and there was one article that we found that I haven't been able to find it since, I don't know where it is, that kind of correlated different milestones in your relationship to different points in time. So like, for example, the honeymoon stage is the first, between 1 and 3 months. And that's where, you're so infatuated with that person and everything that they do is just amazing and they're wonderful. And all you see are like positive things and there's just stars in your eyes and you're just so excited about the relationship because it's so new and it's so exciting. And every text message and every phone call is so exciting. And that's the honeymoon phase. Okay. And then the next phase, right around the 3-month mark, is where you kind of start to see each other's differences. So where the person has been absolutely perfect for the last 2 or 3 months, all of a sudden you start to notice that they have flaws and they have, things about them that are not perfect and things about them that may be less than ideal. And that like honeymoon phase starts to fade a little bit as you start to get into the nitty-gritty of an actual relationship. And then you hit your first struggle or your first real fight. I don't want to say fight, because fight, I'm sure you might have had fights or disagreements earlier than that, but a real struggle and something that is a fork in the road. And for a lot of people, this will break the relationship. And for a lot of people, this will make the relationship and make it stronger. And then if you are able to get past that point, then you go through a phase of learning together where you learn how to fight with each other. You learn how to disagree. You learn how to do conflict resolution together productively. And there are issues that keep coming up, but you're learning how to coexist and how to deal with conflicts together. Okay, and then you hit a point of stability where, you guys have kind of you found your steady state, you found your norm. Okay, and then around the 8-month mark, okay, there's a second struggle. And this is another fork in the road that's a make or a break. And at this point, lots of couples don't end up together, they end up breaking up. And the thought in this article that we read is that if you make it past this second struggle, you're in. And their relationship has a high likelihood of success. And so this one is a very big milestone in a relationship, because if you've made it through and you guys have got through the second struggle, then you hit another point of stability, and each party then starts to reflect on, whether this person is right for them and whether this person long-term is what they want in life. And then that question, the beginnings of to commit or not to commit. So this is kind of like the overarching, and again, take these timelines very loosely. This is based on like a 12-month relationship. Like me and Rami are prehistoric, right? Like when we were young and when we were dating, a year to a year and a half was kind of like the norm. And at that point, then you would know by that point if you're going to commit or not. But again, take this with a grain of salt. Anyways, the reason that I'm bringing this up, okay, and the reason why this was my intro is because in this discussion today, we're going to talk about this 8 to 12 month mark, this point right here, okay, where we're going to talk about, we've had our honeymoon phase with Christ, we've had our relationship learning parts, we've had our struggles. So where are you? Are you in a point where you are able to commit or not to commit? And I can tell you, like from relationship experience, like human relationships, okay, this point is it's life-changing because it changes your perspective and it changes your frame of reference about who he is to you and who you are to him. And this is now the point at which you're deciding if you're going to do this for life. Like, this is the point at which you're deciding whether this relationship that you have with him is a lifetime relationship or whether this is something that you're still unsure about or you don't have enough information about. And so that's why this is such a milestone, or this is such a fork in the road, because this, depending on the decision that you make at this point, this will change a lot of things about your life and how you conduct your life. Like we talked about in the first session, whether, your faith is a part of your life, depending on whether or not you choose to commit, your faith will either be a part of your life or your faith will be your life. Okay. So this is where we left off in terms of the timeline with St. Peter. We mentioned last week that Christ appeared to Peter before appearing to other apostles, but we didn't get into sort of the nitty-gritty of exactly what happened. So we're just going to pick it up from here. We're going to pick it up post-crucifixion, okay? So can I get somebody to read the question of the day? Oops. Sorry. I'm working off of multiple screens and I'm trying to get my mouse back onto my original screen. Ooh, there we go. Okay, can I get someone to read?
I will read.
Thank you.
Now, the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early, while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Then she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciple, whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Peter therefore went out, and the other disciple, and were going to the tomb. So they both ran together, and the other disciple outran Peter and came to the tomb first, and he, stooping down and looking in, saw the linen clothes lying there, yet he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen clothes lying there, and the handkerchief that had been around his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but folded together in a place by itself. But Peter arose and ran to the tomb, and stooping down, he saw the linen clothes lying by themselves, and he departed, marveling to himself at what had happened.
Okay, so thank you for reading. We're picking up post-crucifixion, okay, where they are all in a position of great uncertainty, okay? This person who completely changed their lives, this person who uprooted everything that they knew, has now been crucified, okay? And we're taking this from the perspective of Peter, right? We're following Peter along his entire relationship journey with Christ. And so his last interaction or event or milestone with Christ was not good, right? It was the denial. So this is his last interaction with him, okay? So that's where we're picking it up. So what actually happened here? What can we say happened here? So the first is that Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. When she saw that things were not as expected, she ran to Peter. Why did she run to Peter? Why did she run to Peter? He had just denied Christ. He was not present at the crucifixion. He was present when Christ was arrested and followed him at a distance, okay? But he was not present. at the crucifixion. So why did she run to Peter? Why didn't she run to any of the other ones? And then, if you keep reading, okay, when she ran to him, he bolted out, right? And like ran to go and see. And I mean, he's not the fastest. The other disciple outran him. Okay, fine, athletic ability aside. They both get there. And even though the other disciple gets there first, he does not go in. He waits for Peter. Why? He doesn't go into the tomb until Peter gets there. And then when Peter gets there, they both go in together. Okay? Why? Why are they waiting for Peter? Why are they deferring to Peter?
I think out of respect, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Are you asking the question for us to answer?
Yes, go for it.
I think out of respect because he's the oldest.
Okay. So
they're giving him a chance, yeah.
So out of respect, for sure. I don't know if it's because he's the oldest or if it's because they saw his relationship with Christ. So there were many disciples, many apostles, but there are many mentions of a chosen few, right? There are many mentions of, when Christ went somewhere with 2 or 3 of them only. And Peter was always one of those 2 or 3, always. Peter was always inner circle. Peter was always addressed directly. Peter was always vocal in the interactions between Christ and the disciples. And so Peter may have just had a huge struggle in his relationship with Christ, okay? But the beauty about Peter, which we talked about last week, is that these struggles don't break his relationship with Christ. They actually make them. And the beauty of Peter is that he's able to be corrected. He's able to be directed. And he's able to take that back and change what he does. So Peter's commitment never changes. Okay? After a certain point where Peter's decided to commit, his commitment or his relationship with Christ doesn't change. All of the struggles that he has that we talked about last week were make struggles for him. They didn't break the relationship. The struggle renewed his commitment to Christ, and people could see that he was devoted. People could see that he was still Peter, that no matter what happened, he was still Peter. And this is how he felt about Christ. And this is how he would always feel about Christ. And it was so, he was so committed that people could read that off of him. Like, he didn't have to tell Mary Magdalene to come to him first. He didn't have to tell the disciple to wait for him until he got there. People knew that because Peter was so committed, they could read his relationship off of them, because his relationship with Christ was everything. It was all over him. He carried it with him everywhere he went, even though there were struggles. Like, Peter just went through something extremely difficult, and I'm sure the guilt that he felt after the denial was like heart-wrenching. But it doesn't change his relationship. It doesn't change his commitment to Christ. His relationship with Christ was so like comprehensive, so consuming, that everybody around them could read it. Everybody knew that Peter needs to be one of the first to know because of his relationship with Christ, because of his commitment to Christ. It's like, hypothetically, God forbid, okay, something happens to my husband, okay? Whoever is with him or whoever is doing the notifications will call me first, because he's my husband and I'm his wife and I need to know first. I mean, me and Tamer, my husband has a twin brother, right? So like, the twin thing is a separate thing, okay? But even that, okay, we need to know first, because our relationship with Ronnie is everybody knows that. Everybody sees that. Everybody knows that I'm inner circle. I'm not Sarah who happens to be married. I'm Sarah the wife. Like, so this is the relationship with Peter, because after they made it, after they crossed the threshold of commitment, that relationship was apparent to everybody. Okay? What does this mean for us? Okay, in the last 3 sessions, when we talk about what our tactics are for how to do this, how to develop a deep and lasting relationship with Christ, a lot of the tactics have been very like aggressive, and they've been very like, X, Y, and Z, and I want you to do this, this, and this. Today is a lot about self-reflection. Okay. Today is a lot about sitting with yourself and digging deep into your relationship and your thoughts and your feelings. Okay. And it's a perfect analogy with the whole relationship thing, because if you think about the point at which people are ready to commit to each other, before you get to that point, there's a lot of reflection. Like this is a huge decision in a relationship, whether you're going to marry this person or not, whether the guy's going to propose or not. Like this is a lifetime decision. And so before that, there is a lot of self-reflection about whether they're ready for this and whether this is the right move. And this is analogous, more important, okay, without a shadow of a doubt, but very analogous. And so today is going to be a lot about prompting self-reflection. So do you come away from difficult situations more committed to him? Okay, when things are not going the way that you want, is your commitment to him still evident to you and to everybody around him? Because that's the definition of commitment. I could be out somewhere in public fighting with my husband, but at the end of the day, is he my husband? Yes, he is. Are we married? Yes, we are. Are we still going home to the same house? Yes, we are. The difficult situations don't change my commitment at all. And so the question is, do the difficult situations that you have with him change your commitment? Is your relationship changing for the better? Because until you can reconcile your issues or whatever happened that made you upset or made you frustrated or made you whatever, you can't truly commit for life. Okay. Think about a marriage. Okay. If you fight with that person and you don't come away from those fights knowing that person better and stronger in your relationship with them, why would you marry them? If your fights or your disagreements shake your relationship to the core, what makes you think you're ready to get married? This is the same thing. And we know that the fights or the issues or the whatever are on our side. So until you can reconcile your issues and learn to fight, okay, quote, fight, the way Peter fought with him, how can you truly commit to him for life? Are your issues reconciled or are they not? When you think about a marriage, okay, when you're deciding whether or not to marry somebody, and you're deciding whether or not to commit to somebody, okay, obviously there are a lot of things that go into that question, things that go into that decision-making process, okay? But one of them is figuring out your side of the commitment piece. So will you ever stop loving this person? Is there anything that they can do to make you stop loving them? Will you ever want to be away from that person? So a lot of it is trying to figure out how you feel on the inside. Okay. And if the answer is no, I'll never stop loving this person. I'll never want to be away from them. There's nothing they can do to ever make me stop loving them. Great. That's one element of the criteria for readiness to commit. In this example, that's Peter. Okay. They had a struggle. Peter messed up, but it didn't change the fact that he never wants to be away from Christ. And it didn't change the fact that he was committed to Christ and that there was nothing that Christ could do that could change his commitment to him. He's in, okay? He's ready to commit for life. And he's like so in to the point that everybody around him can read it off of him. Everybody around him knows that he's in, okay? So the you side of this question is, where are you? Okay. Are you ready? Do you think that you will never leave him? You will never walk away from him. You will never stop committing to trying to know him more. You will never stop committing to trying to serve him, to trying to show him how you love him. Are you able to do that? Are you ready to do that? Because this will change your life. If you commit to him the same way you would commit in a marriage, you are yoked. Okay. You have a duty, you have an obligation, you have expectations. You cannot make the other person feel neglected. So are you ready to do that? Because in the example with Peter was ready. Okay. Everybody could see that Peter was ready, no matter how bad it was. Like, I'm sure that the denial was life-changing for Peter, but Peter was ready. Are you ready to do the same thing? Okay, can I get someone else to read the next 2 verses? Anybody at all?
I can.
Thank you, Mary.
1 Corinthians 15:5, and that he was seen by Cephas, then by the 12. Cephas equals Peter equals the rock. Luke 24:34, the Lord is risen indeed and has appeared to Simon.
So in the first verse that we talked about, okay, everybody can see that Peter is committed, okay, and that Peter is in. And that's why everybody came to Peter first before anything happened. When things were changing, they went to Peter first, okay? Now we see Christ's side, okay? It is said, okay, that he appeared to Peter and Mary Magdalene before everybody else. I don't know who was first, Mary Magdalene or Peter, I'm not sure, okay? But regardless, they were of the first, okay? And so in 1 Corinthians 15:5, it makes mention of the fact that Peter, he was seen by Peter first. Peter, this is like his nickname, right? Do you remember when Christ renamed him in, I don't know, session 2 maybe, or session 3, I don't remember. And he renamed him from Simon to Peter, which is rock. This is just like the Aramaic way of saying Peter. So like this is the same person, okay? So in 1 Corinthians, it is said that he was seen by Peter first and then everybody else, okay? And then in Luke 24, it also makes mention of the fact that Christ rose and went to Peter first, okay? Why was Peter one of the first? Why? Why would he appear to Peter first? Their last interaction was rough. Like he denied him, like just flat out denial, okay? Denied everything that they were. Okay, let me tell you how hurt I would be if I ever heard that my husband denied that he was married to me. Like, just flat out denial. Why would he come to me? Is there ever anything that you could do that would make him less committed to you? No, there isn't. And even though their last interaction was hard for Peter, and I'm sure very hurtful to Christ, he knows the heart, okay? He saw Peter's heart. He saw what Peter's commitment was. Even though he's not physically in front of him, he can see the change in Peter's heart. He can see the struggle. He can see the response to the struggle. He can see the remorse. He can see the guilt, and he can see the commitment. He can see all that. And even if that wasn't the case, is there anything that you could ever do that will make him less committed to you? No, there isn't. And his relationship with Peter, this was not a new relationship. Like they had a solid, consistent foundation for their relationship. And yes, there was a screw up on Peter's part, and that was hard for both of them. Okay? Is there anything that you could ever do that would make him abandon you? Never. Never. And he's proving that. Like he's almost proving that to Peter, that like I know what happened there, but we are in this together. And so the second question is, the first question is, are you committed to him? The second question is, do you believe in your core that he is committed to you? Do you believe that there is nothing that you can ever do that will make him leave you or abandon you? Are you confident that he is with you? And I know that seems like a very silly question, but sometimes when you dig deep into your motives behind why you do certain things, or your reasons behind what you do, a lot of people start to discover that they are not secure in his love for them. And they are not confident that he is with them because they are this and this, and they do this and they do this. And their own awareness of their shortcomings makes them not confident in his love. Similarly, okay, when you're thinking about committing to somebody, the question is, are you committed? How do you feel about this person? Do you love this person? Is there anything that they can do that will make you stop loving them? Okay. The other question that you ask yourself is your perspective of their commitment to you. Do you think that they will ever stop loving you? Is there anything that I can do that will make that person stop loving me? Will they ever want to be away from me? Like when I'm thinking about, I mean, Rami did all the proposing and stuff, but like hypothetically speaking, if I was making all those kinds of decisions, is there anything that I can do that will ever make Rami want to leave? Is there any situation that is hard enough or dire enough that I would not be confident that Rami would be there every second of the day? Is there any situation that I can foresee that I would think that maybe we won't make it through something like that? It's too hard for our relationship. That's the second angle of this discussion of commitment. The first is how you feel, and the second is your perspective of how the other person feels. And so, are you confident in how he feels about you? Do you believe? Do you believe that this is true? Do you believe that he will never leave you? Do you believe that he loves you? Right? We've spent this whole series trying to learn and try to find steps about how to fall in love with him. But do you believe that he loves you? Are you confident that he is with you? Are you confident that he is for you and that he is carrying you? No matter what you do, no matter how big your screw-ups are you confident that he's committed to you? Until you can be confident in this, you can't commit. Because how can anybody commit to somebody that they expect to leave them or they expect to hurt them? It's just basic self-preservation. And so in order for you to be able to commit to him, you have to have reasonable confidence that he's with you. Okay, can I get someone else to read? This one's a little bit long. Anyone at all? I can look at the list and see if I recognize anyone.
I'll read.
Thank you.
John 21, verse 1 to 14. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and in this way he showed himself Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." They said to him, "We are going with you also." They went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said to them, "Children, have you any food?" They answered him, "No." And he said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast, and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. Therefore, that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." Now, when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. But the other disciples came with fish. Then, as soon as they had come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught." Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land full of large fish, 153. And although they were so many, the net was not broken. Jesus said to them, "Come and eat breakfast." Yet none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus then came and took the bread and gave it to them, and likewise the fish. This is now the third time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead.
Thank you. I know that one was long. What happened here? Does this sound familiar to anybody? This whole I'm going fishing, we spent all night, we've caught no fish, put your net into the boat. Does this sound familiar? This is post crucifixion, right? This is post resurrection here, okay? They know that he's risen, he's kind of, in and out, okay? And they're sort of figuring out what their new norm is going to look like now that they're not physically following him everywhere he goes. Okay. Does this sound familiar? Because we've talked about an example just like this in the first session. Okay. Like this was one of their first meetings or their first interactions where Peter was fishing. And if you recall, Peter kind of sassed Christ, and Christ was saying, cast your net into the water. And Peter was like, well, we've been doing this all night, but like, okay, like we'll give it one more go with a little bit of sass. We've already been here. This has already happened. Okay. What is Christ doing? He's reminding Peter. Okay. He's reminding him of the first few times that they met. He's reminding them of early on in their relationship. It's like, in a few months, my husband and I will have been married for 8 years. Okay. It's like us going back and having dinner at our first date, the same location. Or like I have a friend whose anniversary was just on Saturday, and they go back every year for their anniversary to their first date restaurant every year. That's their tradition. Okay. Because it's sentimental. Like it's a reminder of, where you were and how far you've come and how committed you guys are to each other given the amount of time that's elapsed. This is what Christ is doing. He's reminding them. And like, I'm sure that in this interaction with them, okay, he had other objectives for the other people that were there. Like, I'm sure Thomas took something different away from it. And the other disciples that were there took something different away from it. Okay. But I'm only looking at this from the perspective of Peter. And from the perspective of Peter, okay, this is a way back playback. This is like a renewal of commitment. Like this is like a sign of like relationship maturity. When your relationship is so like has come so far that you go back to sentimental places from early in your relationship. Like this is him reminding Peter of who they are, what their relationship is, what it looks like. Like this is him reminding Peter of the depth of their relationship and how far they've come. And then you can, my husband is paging his phone. And you can see Peter's reaction, right? Like as soon as the beloved, here it is right here.
Sorry.
Okay. As soon as the one disciple, oops, my daughter just heard that I'm in here. Sorry. As soon as the one disciple points out to Peter that must be him, that must be Christ, he and this is so classic Peter, he puts on his outer garment. Like if he's gonna plunge into the sea, like ideally you would take it off, but I guess he expects them all to kind of jump into the sea. But he's so emotionally charged that he just plunges into the sea and swims to him instead of the other logical disciples, rowing the boat and getting there the normal logical way in the boat. But that's Peter, right? Peter is highs and lows. Peter is like the peak of emotion and then the depth of the valleys. That's Peter. And so he is so overtaken with this reminder, this analogy of a renewal of vows, that he plunges into the sea. He's so relieved to see Christ. He's so relieved to be reminded of what they are that he plunges into the sea. That's Peter. Okay. That's his personality. He's very impulsive. Okay. But this is such a monumental moment for Peter, because look at what Christ is doing. Look at how he is reassuring him. Look at how he's reaffirming for him their relationship and their love in these signs and these actions and these almost inside jokes or inside interactions. I've always loved the idea of a renewal of vows. Okay, I love it. Okay, not because I'm this hopeful romantic and I just want to have another party, and it's not about that. And my husband always rolls his eyes when we talk about this whole idea, but I love the idea because it's a very tangible way to reaffirm your relationship. Like it's a tangible way to reaffirm that you are committed and that you're still committed. And this interaction for me is like the analogy of a renewal of vows. Like Christ came back and he's telling him, like, nothing has changed. I know what happened. I know that you feel guilty, but not only has nothing changed, we are even more committed to each other. Okay? Nothing has changed, but even more so than before the crucifixion, I am with you. Okay? And I will remind you time and time again, every time you need to know that I am with you. And that's what he does for us, right? When you commit, every time he reminds you time and time again that he is with you. In a marriage with my husband, if I need reminding, he will remind me time and time again that he is committed. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties again. Okay. Last example. Can I get someone else to read it? Anyone at all?
I can.
Thanks, Mary.
So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon, Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, Feed my lambs. He said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, Tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my sheep.
I love this passage. I know I say that a lot. I know. The reason that I love this passage is because there are so many things that happened here. Okay. So, first, okay, this is like an affirmation of their relationship. Okay. This is like the solidification. Like for me, this is like the turning point. Like it's like the proposal or whatever. Like this is where, like, point blank, black and white, everybody knows that we're all on the same page. Okay. This is it. Like everybody here knows how Peter feels. Everybody here knows that Peter's committed. Everybody here knows that Peter is in. Okay, that's it. Like he's in. But not only that, okay, there is another element of intimacy here. There is another element of commitment here. Okay. From a relationship goals perspective, okay, like talking about, normal male-female relationships, one of the greatest signs of relationship maturity and relationship intimacy is your ability to discuss how to receive love. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the love languages, a few weeks back. Okay, let's say, hypothetically speaking, okay, my husband does something for me. Okay, I can see his motivation behind it. I can see that, and I can see that he's trying, but it's not what I need. It is a sign of relationship maturity and intimacy for me to tell him, this is what I need. This is how I will feel like you love me. This is how. And that takes a lot. It's extremely difficult, okay? And especially until you get to like a habit in your relationship, and you feel guilty when you do it because you feel like you're not appreciating the other person. The other person feels like, they've tried so hard, and it's a big mess. But once you figure it out, it is like life-changing for the relationship. Okay, it is also a sign of relationship maturity and relationship intimacy. Okay, what is happening here? Christ is telling Peter, do you love me? Yes. This is how I need you to show me. Okay, Christ is essentially telling him here that his love language is acts of service. Okay, if you love me, feed my lambs. If you love me, tend my sheep. If you love me, feed my sheep. This is what I need you to do. This is what I need you to do to show me that you love me. Like, this is how I'm going to receive it. This is how, okay? This is, in a normal human relationship, like a huge sign of relationship maturity. Okay, this is also the reason that we should be serving. And we're not going to talk about service today. Service, I have a whole, like, that's a whole other thing. Okay.
Yes.
But if this is his love language, like, and this is why Peter became who he was, right? This is why Peter essentially was the rock that our faith was built on. This is why, because Christ told him, if you love me, do this. And Peter was committed. Peter was committed. And he said, okay. Like, this is Peter committing to something into the future. Like, Christ is not telling him, like, go right now and walk across the street and do this. Christ is telling him, this is what I need you to do for the duration of your life. And Peter is committing to something well into the future, because well into the future, Peter is still going to be in this relationship, right? That's like me telling my husband, you know, when I'm old and I'm this and I'm that, I want you to do this for me. And my husband saying, yes, I will, I promise. Because when I'm old and whatever, my husband still anticipates being married to me. He still anticipates being committed to me. So he can commit to something into the future because he's in it. And he has no expectation of that commitment ever wavering. This is the same thing. Christ is asking Peter, A, to show him love the way he receives it, and B, to commit to something in the future. Because the expectation is, now that they've committed to each other, that commitment will last. That commitment is going to stick around. And the reality is, Peter came through, right? Peter became one of the greatest. Like, the reason Peter is an example to us right now is because Peter became something great. You know, he started off shaky, okay? But was he able to commit? Yes, he was. Long after Christ left. Like, long after Christ had risen and Christ had ascended, was he able to commit?
I am almost home. I am on.
Hello? Anyways, Peter was able to keep this commitment going while he was with Christ and well after. Okay? Peter was able to commit to serving him well into the future with Christ and long after he had ascended. Why? Because he was committed. He was sure about how he felt about Christ, and he was sure about how Christ felt about him. Can you do the same thing? Because essentially, okay, this commitment that Peter made to Christ took over his life. It was the reason for every single thing he did after that. And I strongly encourage you to pick up this series in the book of Acts. The book of Acts, I used to hate it, okay? I used to like drag my feet about reading it until I went, whatever, we were in Africa, but that Africa part is aside, okay? And we went through the book of Acts like line by line. Okay, and we dug deep into what was actually happening. And now it's one of my favorites. I like strongly encourage you to take this series and pick it back up on your own in the book of Acts and look at what happened to Peter. Okay, and look at what happened to Peter from the perspective of his relationship and his commitment to Christ. Because this commitment that he had to Christ drove the rest of his life. Everything that he did was because of this commitment to Christ. Everything that he did was for him, in him, because of him, through him, like everything, because of that commitment. So the question is, are you ready to commit? Is your faith a part of your life, or is your faith your life? Are you ready to be Peter? Are you ready to show him the same commitment that Peter did? Peter's the example for a reason. All right, I will end it there. Any questions for me? concerns, any disagreements?
Sarah, I think there was a question from last week that I messaged you.
Yes, let me find my phone. Or actually, I can get it from my computer. Is Abuna here? Should I defer this one to him? Abuna, are you here? Abuna Thomas?
I'm here, but I'm on mute.
So, okay. Do you want to take the question?
No, you could go ahead. I don't have the question in front of me. I'm driving.
Okay, I'm looking for it. I can read it to you. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I'm sure it was addressed to you, though.
Okay, let me find it.
Do you want me to send it to you again?
No, I got it. Okay, the question was, Sarah said we tend to get upset with God when our matter is focused on the world and not on heaven. But what if we are doing everything we can to follow him and our prayers are focused on God, heaven, and things that are designed to be a means or pathway to heaven? How do we deal with our frustrations with God in those cases when we are being tested by him? Abuna, you want to take this away?
I could comment, but if you wanna comment as well.
Okay, you first.
Sure. So frustrations with God, I think personally, like that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's okay to have a little bit of frustrations with God. But actually today, in today's sermon, Dr. Wadid, one of the deacons, he was speaking about Job and how Job went through all of these trials and tribulations and whatever, and it's always like a test for our faith and a test for our perseverance. So it's important for us to just understand, especially in this generation, that we need perseverance, we need patience, we need a time that maybe things are not just going so smooth for us, and that God is not really in like an instant type of gratification. He's going to answer our question. So my encouragement would only be around, again, I can't remember, I didn't attend the talk of last week, so I don't know the complete context, but I would just say, like, for me personally, like what's coming on my heart would be more along the lines of perseverance, that it's important for us to just like, okay, God, this is not the right time, no problem. I could tell you, like, personally in my life, like when I wanted things done quickly, or like, for instance, like something had to happen in my life, I had to make a decision of some sort or whatever, God didn't act until, and I promise you guys, like God didn't act until I personally got to the point that like I was okay with either way of the equation, either answer, like if it was a yes or a no, that I'm satisfied that I know that God's will is gonna happen, and that if it's a no, that's God's will, and if it's a yes, then that's God's will. Not like in terms like that I was leaning towards one or the other. So I'm not saying that we can't have a preference. I'm just saying that we have to be okay with the outcome, either this way or that way. And sometimes that takes time. For me, and one of the things I could tell you, like, and I shared this with you guys before, like my journey to priesthood wasn't like an instant journey to priesthood. Between the first time that I actually got asked to the time that I actually was ordained, that was a span of 12 years. So there was like a God kind of working on my patience and getting me to that exact point of just be okay. Like, I want to know that your heart is okay with this or that, with A or B, with no and yes. I want to know that you're okay with that. So that's where like I would go with that frustration. Sarah?
I totally agree with everything you said. I can tell you like what helps me when I'm getting into a position where I'm frustrated. What I tend to do is to try and ground myself in the certainty that he loves me, right? So no matter what is happening, no matter what I'm being denied, or no matter how things are going and what is the cause of the frustration, at the end of the day, Do I know that he loves me? Yes or no? Like, am I confident in that whatever is happening in this situation, that I am loved? Yes or no? Because for me, that's what grounds me. And that's what helps that frustration fade a little bit. Because at the end of the day, if I'm confident and I am secure in the knowledge that I am loved, whatever is happening has a purpose, or whatever is happening has a reason. And it's not just in vain, and it's not to torture me, and it's not whatever. It is because I am loved. And particularly when things are, very uncertain, or things are kind of up in the air, or things are scary, or whatever the situation is, that certainty of clinging to the fact that I am loved and that I am taken care of helps me like coast through the situation. It helps my anxieties reduce. It helps my frustrations reduce, because at the end of the day, I am loved, right? And like, I know I'm making mention of, relationships and relationship goals and stuff a lot, but when you take a fight between a guy and a girl, or a disagreement, you can always boil it down to one of two things. Either somebody feels disrespected, or somebody doesn't feel loved. Because feeling loved is like the anchor of your relationship. And so if you can be confident in the fact that you are truly loved, everything else doesn't feel so bad. You know what I mean?
Sarah, I just want to comment on what you said. Yes, I agree with what you and Abuna said in terms of, like feeling like you're loved and knowing that God is sort of preparing you for the next steps in your life and all that. I agree with it. But to be real and to be relatable, I would say personally, it's hard to see that sometimes. It's hard when you're sort of in the fire to get to that stage of like, I'm loved, and whatever happens next is God's will, and I trust him anyway. It's much easier to feel abandoned, and it's much easier to feel like I don't feel that love in that given moment or in that given situation. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, how do you deal with that? From your experience, or from Abuna's experience, how do you deal with that? When you just can't feel that love, when you can't trust, and you're not all in.
Well, from my side, I could tell you, I know most of you don't have children yet, and God will grant you children, but that experience, like that feeling that you're describing, I totally only understood it like after I had children. Like, there are certain things that I say to Mateo or Mika or Luca that like may sound like I don't, like, from their perspective, that I don't love them. But the reality is there's nothing they could do that will ever make me not love them. And I think just that realization is so important. It's so important to us to realize that his love towards us is not a conditional love. And I know that you're saying, well, I don't feel his love, but that doesn't mean just because you don't feel it that it's not there. Because the reality is that we can go back to looking at the cross and saying that is love. It's what determines you, like what do you taken into account that makes you feel love? Like, if all things, like, if I say that all things are going great and my wife, nobody in my family is sick, and that everybody has a job, and that when I'm in a relationship, everything is going smoothly, and all of these things are going smoothly, then that means God loves me. Then our love is conditional towards him. Our love is like the when then type of love. Like, when you give me this, then I'll know that you love me. But like my kids, and this is something that like I learned from Mateo. Like after like either like giving him a punishment or like reprimanding him for something, or like being so angry, like we all know that, like how we get so angry sometimes. Like my kids like sometimes make me want to like jump out the window, but so angry. But yet Mateo still at the end of that argument will still come and like love me and hug me and give me a kiss, whatever. Whoa, wait a second, didn't you hear what I just said to you? Didn't you see how I said it to you? Like I was yelling at you. And yet something inside of this innocent child is saying, but I know that I could go to my father and that he loves me so much. I know it sounds very theoretical and very like but that's it's something inside of us that kind of says like I don't need like everything to go peachy, and like that I don't have to have trials in order to know that my father loves me and my heavenly father loves me. Our children have that, like, but yet as we grow older we kind of like tend to forget that with God. That's for me personally.
I would add, just like I totally agree with everything everyone said. His example reminded me of something that happens with me. So I would also take some of that responsibility and place it back on yourself. Okay, so there is no question that he loves you. The question is, why don't you show love? And so my first thought would be to remind yourself of all the things that he's done in your life that made you feel loved. And so that's why I know I always harp on you guys about like quiet time and writing things down and whatever, because sometimes I need to go back and when I'm doubting it and when I'm not there and when I'm not with it, to remind myself, well, I know he loved me because he did this, and this. And I actually have like 5 or 6 things throughout the course of my life that are like my proof. Like I know he loves me because of, well, these are the 5 or 6 craziest things he's ever done in my life. The other thing is when Widow was talking about his kids, it reminded me. So my daughter is in I'm sure you can hear her screaming right now. She's in a phase where she's pushing the boundaries, and we're starting to get a little bit discipline heavy with her. And when she's in trouble or when she has a timeout or whatever, at the end of it, she always comes to me and she asks me a question that breaks me. She comes to me and she says, "Mommy, are you happy with me?" And what she's trying to say is, "Mommy, do you love me?" Like, and then what she'll do is she'll ask me, "Do you love me even if I hit Toby?" Like, please don't hit Toby, but yes, I do. "Do you love me even if I poke Toby's eye?" I do. Please don't poke Toby's eye, but yes, I love you, even though you poke Toby's eye. "Do you love me?" And then she asks me all these situations. "Do you love me even when do you love me even when," and every single one is different. And the more she asks me, the more it hurts me because I never want her to doubt how much I love her. But it's a learning point for me, because if I don't feel loved by him, why don't I go and ask him, like, "Christ, do you love me?" Like, she's a baby, and in her innocence she'll come and she'll ask me the same thing. And if you're needing that reassurance, or you're needing to feel that way, why wouldn't you go to him and ask him, like, "Do you love me? Like, I'm struggling, I'm doubting, show me, like, show me how, give me something, like, remind me that you love me," because he'll do it. Like, he's happy to. His love is never the question. The question is, are you willing to seek out the answer? Are you willing to make the effort and take the step and go and seek the answer?
Did that answer?
Yes, thank you, Abuna. Thank you, Sarah.
Any other questions, concerns?
No?
All right, I will hand it over to you guys.
Bless you guys. Well, I'm happy to see all your names on the screen. It's wonderful to see your names and to see you all in the meeting. I miss you guys so much. Hopefully you guys are having a good week. Verena, do you have any announcements?
So we just wanted to welcome anyone who hasn't come to OnRoute before, we want to welcome you here. If you guys are not on the mailing list, please either drop your email in the chat or email us at onroute@smsv.ca. If you have any suggestions or comments or feedback, or you want us to discuss a specific topic that's on your heart, please leave that in the email as well, or in the chat, or just anything. Reach out to us if you need anything during this time. It's much easier now. I would say it's much easier than ever before to invite someone to church. So please share the link for OnRoute, whether it's the Zoom or the Zoom link or the YouTube link. Just share it with your friends, your family, anyone that you think might be interested or has the chance on Sunday to just hear a word of encouragement, or just join a group of young adults at this time. So I think that's it for me. I'm still not sure what's happening next week. I'll leave that to Abuna to let us know. And if we don't know right now, then just I'll make sure that I include that in the next week's email.
Yeah. We'll get back to you on what's next week. It's either going to be a Q&A or we'll start a new series. But we'll get back to you guys by the email. So it's so important to be on the email list. Also, I want to echo what Verena just said. Like, guys, it's really a time that everyone needs encouragement and needs that phone call. And
Let's just lose Abuna.
lose me? Hello, can you hear me? All right, I'm back.
Yep.
Sorry about that. So I'm just saying, I was echoing. I'm like, I think what Marina said. Like, it'll be great to invite someone. Maybe next week before you guys jump onto OnRoute, maybe everyone just share the link with someone. Invite them. Say, hey, OnRoute starting in 15 minutes. Why don't you guys come? We'd love to see you guys there. It's a great time to spend together. Also, just pay attention to the other meetings this week. I know for the crew meeting we have Father Anthony Murad that's going to be the speaker there. So if you guys want to join that would be great. That's on Tuesday. So God bless you guys. If there's no other comments or questions, we could just conclude in prayer.
Marina and Abuna, hi you guys.
Hi.
Hi, Teresa. It's Titi.
Hi, Teresa.
Hey, I just want to ask. So, if we were to, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. If we're to invite people to any of these meetings, do you guys need a heads up to allow them in, like from the waiting room, or how does that work?
All we ask is if they include like their first and their last name. So we don't usually let anyone in with like iPhone or AR or AX or whatever. Like, we just need to make sure that there's a name. If you want to let us know, sure, ahead of time, or just like even a few minutes before the meeting, sure. But it's not like you don't have to. Philo, anything else?
Yeah, that's fine. As you mentioned, you can let us know, or if they just have their first and last name, that's good.
Even if they're like, if they just decide to come last minute, like
that's okay.
If their name is not familiar, that's okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, the security is a lot more like the ones with children. That's where we're like extra cautious. When there's meetings with children, we ask people to turn on their cameras and so forth. So like Sunday school, for instance, you can't go on to Sunday school if you're not opening your cameras. We have to see who's behind that screen. First, this is an adult meeting, and normally we'll connect with them as well in the chat side. Like, who do they know in the class or in the group or whatever. So normally I'll send like a little chat idea or a chat message to that person that I don't know.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
All right. God bless you guys. We'll conclude in prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Hear us, O Lord, when we pray thankfully, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. God bless you guys.
Thank